center helping support the brain. Okay, now within the bones, there are spaces within the bone, and you can't see them here physically. There are spaces within the bone which are called sinuses, and like in here we have a frontal sinus, we end up with sphenoid sinuses, we have ethmoid sinuses, and those are spaces within the bone. Now there are a variety of facets. Facets then are these flat faces. And so here we have the superior articular facet, which then is going to connect to this other facet, which is then the inferior articular facet. And so those two facets then are going to be fitting together. And so we have all these variety of facets in our vertebral column. The head of a bone is usually an enlarged head of the bone, okay, and these will help form joints. And then below the head then it's constricted region, and that constricted region below the head then is then what is called the neck of the bone. Also we have a number of attachments, and when it's relatively indistinct it's called a line or a linea, and so that crest then is not real sharp, real distinct, but this then is where major muscles are attaching to this line or these linea. Where the edge is very, very distinct, this then is called a crest. And so here this upper part of our ilium is the crest of the ilium. Now we end up with a variety of processes, and processes end up being projections, and so we end up with a variety of projections. So here we have a projection from the bone, here's a projection from the bone, and projections like here. So we have a number of projections, and a general term for all these projections then is a process. A little more specific then on the ends of the femur, where this is very smooth end, then it's called a condyle. And so it's smooth and rounded, and very important then for the movement of the femur over the tibia. Now ligaments attach bone to bone, and so above the condyle, the region right above it then is the epicondyle. And so ligaments are going to go from this epicondyle down to the epicondyle then of the tibia. Okay, where there is a very, very large process or protuberance, like here on the femur, this then is a trochanter, so it's physically very, very big, very, very distinct. Lots of powerful muscles are attaching then to this trochanter. Now, not quite so distinct, not quite so prominent, then is what's called a tubercle. And so up here in the humerus, the tubercles here of the upper part of the humerus. Now, tuberosity, again, is this rough and rounded projection here of the ischium. And so this is what we end up sitting on. We sit on this ischial tuberosity, where the projection is quite sharp. It is called a spine. And so this here on the back of the vertebral column then is a spinous process. Also on our scapula, this is a very distinct projection. This then also is the spine of the scapula. The protuberance is another projection, not quite so distinct. Right here in the back of the skull then is what is called external occipital protuberance. Again, a little bit of a process, but not real distinct, but our muscles on the back of the neck are tying into this protuberance. Now, when we start going between the male and the female, when we get into the coccyx bone, so we have two coxal bones which make up the pelvic girdle, and so the pelvic girdle would sit somewhat like this in the body. Okay, and in the male, these then are bigger, they're heavier, all the joints are much more prominent, the points of attachment for the ligaments are much larger, and so these are important. Now, when we start going between the pelvic inlet and the pelvic outlet, we'll use this model here. On the pelvic inlet would be if, and pretend this is a female, okay, would be where the child would be going into the pelvic girdle and coming from the top, and when that's going in, and when it comes out through the bottom is the pelvic outlet. So going on in, pelvic inlet, and when the child would be given birth, that's the pelvic outlet. Now between males and females, they are slightly different. So the pelvic inlet in males now is a lot smaller because we don't give childbirth, and so it is then physically much larger in females. Females, they tend to be more oval shaped. Males, they tend to be more heart shaped. Now the pubic symphysis is this connection between the two pubic bones, and in females it is relatively shallow, and in males it is much longer, the pubic symphysis. Again, more shallow in females, longer than in males. Also, we will form an arc at the bottom, which is called the pubic arch. And again, as males, we don't give birth, so this pubic arch is less than 90 degrees in a male, and it is greater than 90 degrees then in a female. The point of the connection to the femur bone is then the acetabulum, and in the males, this acetabulum, this socket is going to be larger than it is in females. This large opening here is what is called the obturator foramen, and in males this tends to be more rounded in shape. In females this tends to be more oval. This is the greater sciatic notch, where the sciatic nerve comes out, and again in males this sciatic notch is going to be narrower, and in females it's going to be wider. Okay, this then is the sciatic notch. The ilium is this upper flat bone, and in males, again, because we don't give birth, this tends to be more vertical, and in the females it tends to be more horizontal. Also, the iliac fossa here in the males tends to be deeper, and in the females shallow. Likewise, this iliac crest on the top then, in the males it has a greater curve to it, and in females then lesser curve. I'm missing the sacrum. Oh wait, sorry. Here's the sacrum. Sorry, sacrum again. As males, we don't give birth, so the sacrum then in the males is longer and narrower, and then in females it's going to be shorter and wider. Again, this gives more space for the pelvic inlet and pelvic outlet for the child to be born. Also, the tip here, and this one's broke off, is then the coccyx bone. And again, in the coccyx bone, the male, the coccyx bone will project more anteriorly. It's a lot longer and will project anteriorly, and that's going to cut out that pelvic outlet space. And in females, it's going to be shorter and it's going to be vertical. Again, giving much more space for the child to be born out through the birth canal. And that's it.